According to a new report from the New York Post this week, Donald Trump, according to his allies that spoke to the New York Post, has actually resigned himself to the fact that he is actually going to lose his properties next week as New York Attorney General Letitia James prepares to seize them if Donald Trump is not able to pay the $464 million bond. But these allies maintain that Donald Trump is super confident that he is going to get all of his properties back, even if he has to go to the Supreme Court. So if he loses his properties, Donald Trump is currently of the opinion that, it's just temporary. I'm going to get them back, right? Let me read you this. This is so dumb. While some reports have raised speculation that Trump may go nuclear with a Chapter 11 filing to protect his prized real estate assets across Manhattan, experts said bankruptcy would create unwelcome complications as the 2024 election season comes to a head. Rather, Trump may be planning to let the deadline pass, leaving it to New York Attorney General Letitia James to seize Trump's bank accounts or buildings, including Trump Tower, from where he declared his 2016 presidential run and which famously includes his personal penthouse. Partly because he believes the chances are good that he could recover the assets on appeal, even if he is forced to take his case to the U.S. Supreme Court, according to friends. That's not gonna happen. Now, look, I am still of the opinion, even though we've only got a couple days left now, I do feel, just based on everything we've seen from Trump, something's gonna come along at the last minute and save him. I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, but we have seen that too many times, to think that, this is it, this is the big one, and then of course, something happened, it's not. So I'm not getting my hopes up that his properties are going to be seized, but let's assume for a minute that they are. If the properties do in fact get seized, then that would of course satisfy the $464 million that he owes in the fraud trial. So at that point, he is able to appeal. Even if he doesn't post the bond at the end of the 30 days, which of course is Monday the 25th, he is still able to appeal it once that debt has been settled effectively. So sure, he can go to the appellate court and the appellate court's going to tell him, nope, we're not going to overturn this. And then he can appeal again until he gets to the United States Supreme Court, at which case having the Supreme Court oversee the results of a civil lawsuit. I mean, it's not unheard of, but it's also not common. It's also really not common for them to even overturn a verdict, let alone reduce the amount. Civil suits are typically not something that the Supreme Court gets involved in, a civil suit against an individual. So I think this would be one of those times where the Supreme Court just says, we're not going to take the case at all. And then Trump is left with what the lower courts say. It also raises another problem, though, because simply holding those assets is not necessarily satisfying what Donald Trump owes the state. So if he loses on appeal, then they're stuck with these assets. And then he says, well, I'm going to take it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, it's going to be months before they can get to it. And in that time, if there is not a stay or an injunction placed on those assets, Letitia James can just start selling them off. So if by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, assuming there is not an injunction in place to prevent the sale of the assets, then no matter what the Supreme Court says, even if they overturn it, all Trump's going to get is the money back. The assets will be gone. Somebody else will own them at that point. So even his last ditch hope here, like, don't worry, the Supreme Court will give it back to me. There may be nothing to give back to you other than cash. What are you going to do at that point? Go begging like, hey, can I buy my building back? Like, that's not going to happen. You'll have a lot of cash on hand, but you won't have the assets anymore. And it's going to be very difficult for you to replace them. So you can hope the Supreme Court does this all you want, but the facts are overwhelmingly against you at this point.